Pleasure to welcome to the podcast. It's Matt Freitas. Matt, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Yeah, super happy to be here, Damon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was just I just read your article in USA Lacrosse Magazine. Wanted to reach out, get you on the show, hear a little bit more about your story and about yourself as a goalie. But I'd like to hear where it all started. You remember jumping into the goal for the first time?
Yeah, no. So two funny stories. When I started playing lacrosse in general, I played midfield for, I guess it was like half a year because it was just the indoor winter season. My mom signed me up thinking it was an indoor flag football league. And so that was kind of the obsession at the time, was flag football. I didn't want to play tackle. I was kind of scared of the bigger kids, but, and so a couple of weeks went by. It's maybe a few days before the season starts. My mom realizes this was not a flag football league. It was a lacrosse program. So ran out, grabbed some gear, and then obviously stuck with it ever since. But transitioning over to goalie, obviously, it's probably the classic story, right? It's either you're the only person with a cup or you hate running the most. And I happen to be on the hate running the most side of things. And so tried it out after a few games that winter season and ended up picking it up full time that following spring. So I was probably third or fourth grade at that point.
Third or fourth grade. Awesome. So that's like what, 8, 9 years old, around that age.
Something like that. Yeah. I'd say 9's a safe bet.
Yeah. That's funny you mentioned the cup, the only one having a cup thing. I didn't really even know that was a thing. And then I posted on my Instagram, like, hey, why did you guys become a goalie? And like, I kid you not, it was like 5 or 6 kids. It was like, I was the only one with a cup.
Yeah. You're the one person who shows up and then you're just used to it at that point. And they never let you go because they know you have the cup. So you have to learn to love it. But
there you go. Watch out. If you're a youth goalie wearing a cup, you might get recruited into playing goalie. So you have a cup, you jump in there. Is it something like you immediately like at first, or were you kind of like, oh man, what did I sign up to? What was kind of your initial feeling playing goalie?
I mean, first reaction was I just love that I could just stand and yell at my teammates and not have to run around like crazy. So from that immediate reaction, it was great. I'd say the first like what did I get myself into type of moment was, it's got to be the same for almost everybody, but that first body save, the first time it hits you in the thigh or the shin, I couldn't even tell you where in my body it hit me. It obviously wasn't the fastest shot on earth because it was from another 9-year-old, but as soon as I kind of shook it off and I picked up the ball and I passed it away, I realized, I mean, it hurts. It doesn't hurt that bad. And like, I was never very good at playing field lacrosse. And now I know I can make a real impact over here just because I'm willing to step in front of the ball. So I think I fell in love with it pretty quickly. And then by the time I told my mom I wanted to play full time, her and my brother brought me to the backyard and started throwing tennis balls at me. And the deal was that if I flinched, then I'm not allowed to play goalie because I'm clearly not cut for it. And I guess I pulled it off enough because I just really, really wanted to stick with that position. And now it's been a decade plus more playing. So it worked out.
Beautiful. I like how they use the tennis balls too. That's smart.
It was good. I'm glad. I'm very grateful they didn't use real lacrosse balls that day because I think that might have pushed me out of playing goalie. But I think it was more just fun for my brother than anything else.
Love it. Now, where did you grow up? Talk to me a little bit about that. Was there, when you decided that, all right, I'm going to play lacrosse goalie full time, was there like some good resources for you to actually learn the position?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from a town just south of Boston. So pretty robust youth lacrosse program. By no means a powerhouse in the region or anything like that, but a lot of very willing coaches, a lot of players at the youth level. So it was fairly easy to transition over. I actually lucked out more than most that my first youth coach was a college goalie and a high school goalie, and so when you don't really get that specialized kind of focus on learning how to play goalie at a young age, I luckily was able to get that right away. So it was a really, really important resource because at least I say I got the fundamentals down, but I don't really play a very fundamental game now, but it worked out.
Yeah. So what kind of things did that goalie coach teach you? Is it just the basics? Just, stand here, hold your hands like this when the ball comes at you, top hand of the ball, like all the fundamentals of making a save?
Yeah, absolutely. So he ended up being my coach from 4th grade all the way through 8th grade. So I got to work with him a lot over the years. Yeah. Somebody I still keep in relative touch with now. But I think the first things that he started to teach me was just one, figure out stick skills right away, learn how to throw with the goalie stick, learn how to catch with the goalie stick, and learn how to scoop with a goalie stick. Because if you can't figure out those three things, it doesn't really matter if you make the save because you're just going to hand it over to the offense again. And so that was the really important thing that he had me learn during that first season of playing, where there wasn't going to be a ton of time to learn the basics of, fundamentally stepping towards the ball and keeping hands soft and working on your big outlet passes. But then once the off season started beyond that, and then every season moving forward through my youth days of playing, I got to work with him 3, 4, 5 times a week of just, this is how you're going to step to the ball. All right, now let's transition that to a shuffle step. Make sure you're keeping your hips very square to the shooter. Here's how you're going to decide, mainly based on instinct, but just going over the top or underneath to those off stick hip shots. And so it was just really, really helpful. I think more than anything, hearing his insight and his experiences of playing goalie, because he was able to just understand what I was feeling when I got mad that I let in a goal, or I wasn't feeling great because I took one off the forearm. So it was a really, really helpful experience growing up.
That's cool. That's awesome. Now, knowing everything that you know now about the position, if you had to coach like a young you or a young, a very young goalie, would you do it the exact same way, or is there anything you would change?
I think the first and foremost, I totally agree that stick skills are the number one thing you have to learn. So it ended up here at Williams, we have a wall ball test, which it's very simple. It's just 30 seconds each hand, and you need to get 30 reps each hand within that 30 seconds. So 30 seconds righty, 30 seconds lefty.
With the goalie
and it's
stick.
a hard test to pass with the goalie stick. We don't switch it up. Poles use poles, goalies use goalies.
All right.
And so being able to get to college and be able to actually pass that test was, I think, a huge confidence boost getting there. And so I think a huge part of that is only because not only was I taught stick skills at a really young age, but it was ingrained in my mind. Like, you need to make sure the upkeep of your stick skills is really working out. So, a lot through youth, high school, college, it was just a lot of wall ball, a lot of pass with friends, a lot of working on both really simple passes, 10 yards, just right to the box, or those longer ones. You're facing a 10-man ride and you have to throw it 80 yards to the opposite corner. So, if I'm coaching a youth goalie, first and foremost, it's stick skills 100%, learn how to scoop, learn how to clamp. And then we'll move on to all the basics of really being able to step to the ball, play without fear, make saves.
Love it. Love it. Stick skills are so important. I feel like a lot of goalies don't realize how beneficial wall ball is to the lacrosse goalie game. Because you think like, oh, well, attackmen do it, middies do it, because they're passing and catching all of the time. And what more is goalie than just catching a really fast errant pass, right? So like
exactly,
you got to be able to catch the basic ones before you catch those 80, 90 mile an hour ones.
100%. And it's definitely worked out for me growing up in that I'm not the most athletic goalie in the world. I'm not like crazy fast. I'm not going to go lay out big hits when I'm running up the field. But being able to really trust my stick, it's been super, super helpful at every level of play. So wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. So going into your story from the USA Lacrosse article, at the age of 11, you got into a car accident. And tell me a little bit about that. I'd love to hear kind of the story for everyone listening in case they're not aware.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I'm from Massachusetts. I was in a Boy Scout troop at the time, and we were heading up to Maine for our big annual Boy Scout ski trip. We're heading up to Shawnee Peak. And so because I was 11, that's that's the minimum age for being a Boy Scout instead of a Cub Scout. So this was my first big trip with my troop. Was super excited. Got to leave school early. And I ended up, it was just me, my dad, and my friend Zach, who were sitting in the car. And so Zach was a couple of years older than me at the time. So he ended up getting shotgun because, Boy Scout rules or troop rules, whatever. Oldest kid gets shotgun, even though it was my family's car. Which, getting it, I was a little salty about, but I got over it. And so we're heading up to Maine. I actually fall asleep in the back seat of the car. So I don't remember the lead up to the accident itself. But next thing I know, we're driving on some highway in Maine. Our car takes a really sharp swerve to the left. And that was, my dad swerving the car because a car was coming straight at us. And it ended up hitting pretty much exactly where I was sitting in the back of the car. And so beyond that, I won't get into kind of any of the graphic details or anything, but I will say I didn't go into shock for whatever reason. So I do remember, every little detail from waking up from my nap to actually ending up getting into the ambulance, being on my way to the hospital. And after that, it's all hazy because that's when I started getting some pain medications and everything. But in the accident itself, I ended up with a broken rib, a concussion, a broken ankle, and then the loss of my lower right leg. So I have it, for anybody listening, it's amputated about the same spot where a mid-calf sock would go to. So I still have my entire calf muscle. It's actually wrapped around my leg at this point. But I don't have an Achilles. I don't have my foot. I don't have my ankle.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. And I read in that article, so you were back at practice a month later? How could that be?
Not quite a month. So it was a month after getting my first prosthetic.
Okay, there you go.
I think what the timeline they were talking about.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say, you can typically get a prosthetic leg within maybe 3-ish months, 2 to 3 months of losing a leg. For me, I ended up having some infection issues on my stump. So I lost it early January. It was January 4th, 2013. And I ended up getting my first prosthetic that May. So it took about 4 months. And then within a month, I think it was probably about 3 weeks, I was back out at my first practice. And I was really bad at that first practice back. I could barely move.
Sure.
My steps were by no means fundamental or pretty, but just being able to get out there, put a helmet on, it was pretty important for my recovery, I think.
Oh yeah, 100% agree with that. And do you 11's pretty young, right? You're pretty young. You're still a kid at age 11. What's going through your head mentally? Are you thinking like, oh, I'm never going to play sports again? Are you not even like thinking about sports? Like what's kind of going on through your head mentally?
Right. So I do have to say up front, I was on a lot of pain medication, and I don't totally remember a lot of that time, like immediate post-op especially those first few weeks in the hospital.
Yeah.
But what I can say, my normal answer to this question is my mom's favorite story about me losing my leg. And I think this was actually talked about in the article as well, but I'll say it again. And it was that I didn't find out that I lost my leg until probably like a day and a half, 2 days after the accident itself. Because I was lying in this hospital bed. Obviously, I had the broken rib, so I couldn't really be seated upwards. So I was pretty much just looking at the ceiling or sleeping. And so the doctors come in and they say, Matt, like we're really sorry to say this. Like we've already explained everything to your parents, but we had to amputate your foot. You're going to live the rest of your life as an amputee. You still have your knee, but you don't have a foot or an ankle anymore. And you're going to have to learn to live like that. And so immediate emotions, stuff like that. I don't know if I have a great answer for you, but according to my mom, the first thing I said after that was, when can I play lacrosse again?
Yeah, let's go.
Which is, I mean, she loves that. And I love it too. I'm just kind of going off of, I'm trusting her word that I said that. And it was, she always says, you didn't ask, will I play lacrosse again? You asked, when will I play lacrosse again? And so I think that whole idea ended up being one of the most important things for my recovery. And it's that I had a very concrete goal to get back to. It wasn't, I want to be okay. I want to get back to where I was. It was, I want to be able to compete in the sport I love again. And so that was kind of what defined those first couple of months and gave me a goal to really get back to practice. And so the few months later, when I ended up being able to get to practice, that was like the biggest possible first step towards, really getting to where I am now and where I hope to be the rest of my life.
Yeah. I love that so much. A lot of goalie moms and dads ask me like, well, how can I like motivate my kid? How could I motivate my kid? And to me, you just hit on the answer that I like to give them the most, which is like, they need a goal. You need like some sort of like really strong driving purpose. Right. And for you, it was just get back out there. It was just get back out there and play again.
Right.
But that was really strong, right? I mean, from where you're at, like, obviously, that's a huge goal and you have to work really hard to get that. But that motivated you, I bet a tremendous amount, right? Like every day you probably woke up and you're like, man, I want to get back out there. What do I need to do now to make that happen, right?
Absolutely. And so if you look up my name online, like with lacrosse next to it, you'll see a bunch of old pictures of me when I was 11 and then 12, because my birthday is in February. So it was right after. But crutching around all of the youth lacrosse practices in my town. Like holding a lacrosse stick, wearing like my silly little snapback hat that didn't match my clothes. And so it was really bad. I was not a fashion guy back in the day. But being able to just be around the sport, being able to see my friends still having so much fun with it, and hearing from them and from the coaches that like they were playing for me until I was able to get back, like it was, I mean, it really did mean the world to me. And ever since then, right, ever since I've been able to see that kind of support for me, and but also simultaneously being really jealous that I wasn't out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
It was, that has just manifested itself into my goal setting process, playing lacrosse the rest of my life up until I guess now when I just finished my official playing career in college.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Do you now, like, you got back out there, and I'd love to actually hear first, like the story of like physically, how was it? Right. Like, I mean, you're obviously, your body's different. Like you're learning how to almost walk again, right? Or at least run again and play again. And talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So a lot of people ask me like what the big differences are between two
Yeah.
legs and one leg. And at this point, I mean, we're over a decade past. I have no idea what it's like to walk on two legs. I completely forget.
Yeah.
But what I do remember is that of like transition over. And it's that, I mean, now I don't have to think about it as much, but every step I had to really think, how am I going to walk here? Am I going to make sure that I'm not just falling flat on my face, literally just walking down the street or walking up the stairs at the front of my house? It was a really difficult process at first. And so then when you started adding in lacrosse to that and being able to take like effective, efficient steps to the ball,
Mm-hmm.
making sure you're keeping your hips square, making sure you're not crossing over. I mean, it was really hard at first. And so
Yeah.
I think that is what ended up changing the way I played lacrosse into, I big explosive upper body movements, I guess, have kind of become more of a staple until I learned how to really step with my leg. And then when I was able to kind of blend it all together, I think that's when I figured out how to be, a relatively good goalie. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the funny part is I actually think it was harder thinking about my leg in everyday life than it was playing lacrosse. Because in
Uh,
everyday life, every single step, because when you're just walking, you're just thinking about walking. And so I
right.
was thinking about that constantly. But when you're playing lacrosse, I can't afford to only think about how I'm stepping because then I'm going to get, hit in a really bad place with the ball or letting it go.
Right.
And so it kind of was able to take my mind off of the whole process, and let me really just engage in a non amputation related task. And that was really, really helpful. And I'm
Yeah.
sure it'd be the same with somebody trying to get back to a lot of other sports. I don't think that's like special about lacrosse. Lacrosse just ended up being the way I manifested it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It's like when you got this, 80, 85-mile-an-hour thing coming at you, like you don't have time to think like what's going to go on with my leg. I just got to go, right? I just got to
Exactly.
make that save. And so in many ways, I mean,
Yeah.
and when we're performing at our best, that's what you do. A lot of times goalies do get in their head, right? And they are then thinking about that last shot. They are thinking about, oh man, my leg's hurting me or my shoulder's hurting me today. And then that's when you don't actually play that well.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, 100%. I don't think there's ever been a point in the game where after letting in a goal or two or three, like the best way to get out of that rut was like, oh, I need to make sure that my step angle is a lot better than this, and making sure I'm fixing the tiny little things. It's all about just feeling once you actually find yourself in the game. And I think that losing my leg actually helped me learn that a lot better.
yeah. You also said in that article that um, you didn't think you would have played college lacrosse if you hadn't lost your leg. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's I think it's a work ethic thing. And so when I lost my leg, I was not a good lacrosse player. Like, let me be wildly clear about that. Um, I was a pretty bad goalie. I don't know if I really looked at lacrosse as kind of like my sport. I don't know if I had a sport. And I think being forced to step away from it made me realize how much I really cared about lacrosse and how much I cared about my team. And so um, I think losing my leg kind of helped me develop that real passion for the sport, because I thought it was fun. Don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I didn't. I don't think I really realized how synonymous I wanted lacrosse to be with my name until I was taken away from the sport. And so beyond that, I realized I'm going to have to work really, really hard if I want to do something with this. I mean, I'm already a step behind, like figuratively and literally. I've taken
Right.
time off now from playing. I know I'm going to have a less explosive right side of my body now that I have this leg.
Right.
Um, and I mean, that's not even like a wallow in self-pity thing, but your ankle is really important for big steps to the ball, and explosive running.
Sure.
So I realized I was going to have to relearn everything I knew about how to be an athlete. Um, but I think what was most important was that when I realized that like everything was going to be different about how I played sports, I wasn't sitting there like, oh, this is going to be really scary. I was like, this is going to be really tough, and I'm really excited to do it. And that's what made me realize like lacrosse is absolutely, I want to go play lacrosse in college. I want to go be an All American. I want to go play the best that I can. Um, and then the work ethic came off of that. I met some great people who helped me focus on my rehabilitation, making sure I could weight bear on my stump, making sure I could properly move and not mess with my hip with my different walking mechanics. And then I met different trainers who were like, Matt, let's get you going. Let's get you big and
Yeah.
strong. Let's get it. So, your leg doesn't even matter, and people are just going to be playing you and be like, whoa, he also has one leg, not, oh, look at that. That makes me feel kind of bad for him. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's all about proving people wrong. And it also just gave me some great resources to help me get to where I got.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's a great story. And so you're at Williams now, or I guess you just graduated. You just finished up your career there.
I did. Yeah. Graduation's in 2 weeks, which
Let's
is a
go.
scary thought. So it's, I'm in my beautiful college apartment right now, and we'll, just, you know, waiting for it to end, which is really scary.
Oh, well, it's exciting. It's exciting,
Very
right?
exciting.
There
Absolutely.
you go.
Absolutely.
Let's reframe that. Let's reframe that.
I know you're right.
Um,
You're right. You're right.
to your point though, I read it also in that article that your head coach, I don't even think he knew at the beginning that you
Yeah.
were an amputee, right? So
Mhm.
he was just watching you play, and then sort of recruiting you based on that, and only after was it like, oh, he also has this going on. Is that tell me about that?
Yeah, no, it's my recruiting process was a little weird for sure. And it's obviously atypical because of my leg, and I don't blame any coaches for having this line of thought, but it is scary to recruit somebody who has a prosthetic leg. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Sure.
You have
Sure.
to find a very proper situation for you. You need to find a coach who's willing to take that risk. I think a lot of that lies in the rest of the goalie room. He has other guys he can trust. So he thinks you're a good goalie, but he can kind of take that risk on you. And so
Mhm.
I think I found myself in the perfect situation with Williams. And so Coach McCormick told me this story. I obviously didn't hear much about it on the front end, just kind of after I committed and after I got closer with Coach McCormick. But he saw me at a tournament one fall. I was wearing some baggy sweatpants, so it was tough to tell. And then after the game, I switched my leg out, or took my shoe off to take my cleat off, or took my cleat off and was putting a shoe back on. And he realized like, okay, wait a minute, that's not a real leg right there.
Right.
And so yeah, and he was pretty upfront with it, honestly. He during all of my recruiting visits with him, and it was Coach McCreary at the time, who is now the head coach over at Vassar. He was the assistant at Williams at that point. Um, they were very upfront in asking me questions like, "Do you think this will impact you when you play college lacrosse?" And I really appreciated that, because
Mhm.
I mean it's very easy to look at somebody with a disability and try to ignore it, right? Because you don't want to define that person by their disability. And it's a really tough line to find, especially for somebody who might not have a lot of experience with persons with disabilities in their lives. But it obviously, well, you don't want to define the person by it. It is a very obvious and clear part of their life. And so my
Right.
mindset on it is, you don't have to go and say, oh, Matt, that's the one leg kid. But you can absolutely look at me and say, oh, Matt's the kid with one leg.
Mm.
It don't define me by it, but
Hmm.
certainly associate me with my disability. And so understanding the reality of that, the coaches, wanted to check with me and make sure that I really believed that I could come and play high level college lacrosse, play in the NESCAC. Um, and as soon as they asked me that, I think I realized like, these guys get it. I really want to play for them. I want to play for
Yeah.
Coach McCormick. And then from then on, it just lucked out for me, at least, that he decided to offer me a spot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And was it sort of the accumulation of all the hard work that you put in? Like, leading up to that moment that led you to say with confidence, yes, I can play. I think I can play at this level.
Absolutely. I think if I didn't really believe that I had put in the work, I think there would have been a big hesitation there, and I don't know what I would have said.
Right.
But through the work I did with, my high school coaches, with Massachusetts, which was my club team, through I used to go to those G3 camps all the time with Kip Turner, John Galloway, Adam Gittleman.
Yeah.
If I didn't really, really believe that I had put in enough work to get to this next level, and that I didn't believe that I would be willing to put in more work once I got there, then I'd like to think that I wouldn't have lied to them and gave them the answer,
Right.
an incorrect answer. But I really believed it, and so there was no hesitation when they asked.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it just speaks to the level of work you've got to put in. Like if you're going to play lacrosse in college at any level, like, if the head coach asks you that question, like you have to say with confidence, yeah, like I'm ready, right? I've put in the work.
Yeah,
100%. So,
100%. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think you should be going to play a college sport if you don't really believe that, like, you can go make an impact, whether that's on the field, whether that's making an impact on the team. But you should want to be there as much as you think you deserve to be there. And it's just my leg just was able to kind of frame that in a very convenient bubble for me for that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. It can always be tricky, when you get amongst a new team, new group of guys to sort of, I don't know, be a leader, to find your spot, to find your role. And then especially coming in with the disability. How do you handle that? How do you become a leader of the team? Because you are a leader. You're the captain right now, right? Or you were, right? Senior captain. And maybe you weren't like right when you got there, obviously, but how do you go about building and demonstrating those leadership skills amongst the new guys?
Yeah, I think it's obviously different person to person. And I'll kind of compare myself to um, one of the other goalies in my goalie room right now, Matt Wetmore. He's a rising junior. And it's that when I got in, I think I took a very quiet approach. At least I tried to. Obviously, the kind of the fiery competitive nature came out for better or for worse sometimes during practices or lifts or scrimmages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that was me kind of realizing what I wanted to be in the field. Um, I wanted to be a presence. I didn't want to be along for the ride. I wanted to be a presence. But I told myself coming in freshman year, step number one is going to be to learn as much as possible throughout this entire freshman year. We had a returning starter who, coming off the back of a Final Four run for Williams in 2019, it was pretty set in stone that he would be the guy unless some crazy, crazy thing happened. And so I decided I'm going to learn from him as much as possible. I'm going to learn from our sophomore goalie as much as possible. I'm going to learn from the coaches and from our other teammates. Stay quiet, put my head down, and really focus on honing my craft. And at least the way I look at that retrospectively is I hope I was able to earn other guys' respect because of that. But there's very different ways to earn respect as well than putting your head down. And so that's why I wanted to talk about Matt Wetmore. And it's that he came in and everyone knew right away, like what he wanted to be and how he wanted to lead a group of guys. And everyone understood, like, he's the type of guy that I will buy in from an 18-year-old. Like when he came in, I was 21 years old. He's an 18-year-old new freshman, and he's loud. He's like getting on guys. If he sees you not working as hard as he thinks you can work, he will get on you in a very positive but loud way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, wow, like that is a guy. Like if I was in the army, I'd want him to be my general, you
Right.
know? And so it's two very different approaches. And I think each has kind of their own merit. And the way he did it, it helped me learn my junior, senior year, how I wanted to lead a little differently too. I think the way I did it my freshman year, it's a different approach, but just kind of hoping to earn guys' respect from a different angle. And yeah, but it's a scary thought coming in with a disability, especially because you never know what guys are used to. You never know how they're going to react. But I think I lucked out in that. Williams is a phenomenal school. My teammates are all remarkably smart people. And so I definitely lucked out in that they all want to learn too. And so the first thing that I got when I came in with my leg, it wasn't mockery. It wasn't shock. It wasn't anything like that. It was all questions. It was just tell us about very much like this podcast. It's like, tell me about how you lost your leg. How did you feel in this moment? How do you feel in that moment? Do you think it's different from the way that I have to play goalie? And that was a really remarkable thing. It just made me feel at home from the get-go. And so, long story short, the coaches made a really great culture. The players all bought into that. And it reacted really well to how I wanted to come in. So
beautiful. Love that story. The other thing I read in there is it says, you said, I'm definitely a suffer in silence and quiet type of guy. And, that could be tough, right? Lacrosse goalie is a very tough mental position, right? And then all of a sudden you factor in this accident that you have. And now like I don't know, maybe you like start feeling bad for yourself, or you start thinking like, oh, I'm different in a way. Talk to me about what that means, about being a suffer in silence type of guy, and how you battle against that.
Sure. I think I might have learned that more from playing lacrosse goalie than losing my leg or any other experience in my life. And obviously I like how I do it, even if I can recognize that it's not the best way to cope with negative emotions or tough situations. Because I think I've learned that it is the best way for me. But I wouldn't recommend it in any way, shape, or form, especially to somebody who sits on an island like a lacrosse goalie does, or goalie in any sport.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it definitely stemmed from the idea that when I was growing up, I wasn't a great lacrosse goalie. I wouldn't make a ton of saves in a game. And I leave really feeling like I was the reason that I lost this game. And what I have learned over the years is that, one, that's a really unproductive way of thinking. But the strategies of that made me realize that I wanted to rely on myself first and foremost, when it comes to, battling my own inner demons about anything going on in my life. And then after I've kind of dealt with it internally and I realize, am I done with it, or do I need to talk to somebody about it? That's when I can make that decision. And so I just don't want to rush anything when it comes to the way that I'm feeling. And so, a couple things that I've learned kind of from that perspective is you're going to go through a lot, and lacrosse is never isolated in your life. Sports never isolated. One of my coach's favorite things to say is like, leave your homework at the door. And then when you leave this locker room, leave lacrosse here, right? Mm-hmm. Like, come down to the field when you can work on it, when you think you need that, but keep those things separate, because you don't want a bad game to impact the test you have the next day, or you don't want a tough essay to impact the practice you have the next day. And so being able to kind of flip that switch is really, really, really important. And then when it comes to kind of being individual about that, it's just that I don't want to have to rely on my teammates for, tough situations with school. And I think a lot of that is just because I'm a really stubborn guy. And if I could go back and do it all differently, I would probably say, I should lean on other guys a little bit more. After a bad game, realize that I am not the reason we lost that game. But it's just, that's the way of the road when it comes down to my lacrosse career. I can't go back and change that, but I'm hoping to take those lessons to future stresses in my life, job, family, social life, whatever, and realize that not everything all the time is on me, even if I want to cope about it by myself.
Yeah. It's
kind of all over the place, but
no, it's good. It's good. It's a common thing. Like, a lot of lacrosse goalies, especially youth, feel like losses are their fault. They put it on 100%. Them 100%. So it's something that I talk about a lot with youth goalies and with the parents, is like, how do we deal with that? And to your point, like, everyone's going to be different. Like, just like every lacrosse goalie is different, right? There's different styles of playing the position. There's different ways to deal with this. But I do think that, talking with the team and like having like a trusted teammate is so helpful, right? Because a lot of times 100%. Like, goalies will say like, I feel like it's my fault. And then you ask like a teammate, hey, like, that last loss, I really felt like that was my fault. What are they going to say? No, like, that's not your fault, dude. Like, this is a team sport. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to pin it on the goalie. So I feel like that communication aspect can be very helpful in many situations.
Absolutely. And I've lucked out that I've lived with the same two teammates pretty much all 4 years of college. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time with them, and we drive back together after every practice. We drive back together after every game, and we sit and talk and we review. And so many times I sit down and I'm like, I really blew that, guys. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't make that save when I needed to, or I threw a bad pass. Um, and never once have they actually agreed with me.
Right.
Like it hasn't ever happened, you know? Um, and so either way, like teammates are there to uplift you. But they're also there to be realists with you. And, you know, a goalie can almost always win you a lacrosse game, but a goalie will almost never lose you a lacrosse game because you have to remember if you make a phenomenal save after they get through the whole defense, they're going to remember that as a great defensive play in general.
Mhm.
If you let in a goal, it's a team play. It got through every other guy on the field before it got into the net. And so just because you are going to be involved with every save and every goal against doesn't mean that you're the reason that every goal went in. And so it's a lot easier to say that now that I'm done with my playing career than
Mhm.
it was even 3 weeks ago when I was still playing.
It is when you're in the thick of things, you know, and sometimes you hear like, oh, well, they had to get through the entire defense in order for them to score on you. Like sometimes that just doesn't matter, right? The goalie's still like, well, yeah, but I should have made that save. I should have made that save. And I love that competitive fire. I
Yeah,
love that
it's
spirit.
okay to be self-critical and it's okay to like have that kind of like fiery competitive nature. Like I know I can do more,
Yeah.
but never when it gets to the point of like you're really down in the dumps about it because
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Because that's another lesson that goalies need to learn is self-compassion. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
goalies are just way, way too hard on themselves. And like, yeah, I appreciate the fire, the spirit, but there comes a certain time when you got to be like, you know, would you say that same comment to a teammate that you're telling yourself in your own head?
No,
Probably not,
never.
right? Right.
No.
So,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great way of looking at it. You know, I
yeah.
think that same thing kind of went into how I organized a lot of like the ways I wanted to practice during the season. So much of it is about like kind of building positive vibes, building confidence before games so that when you're in, you're feeling good about it. And so it hits a point where you can't only really focus on the negative parts of your game, the stuff you really want to work on. But a lot of what we would do in season, especially the day before games, would be the stuff that we really enjoy seeing as goalies, the really fun drills, the stuff we're really good at to build that kind of confidence wagon.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart. Yeah. So you're feeling good. You're feeling strong mentally going into the game, right?
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
here's the thing is it's obviously important to get your work in on your weaknesses, but
Right.
one day typically will not make a difference in preparation for a game the next day. So do what you can to feel the best you can for a game. And that was our mindset this year. And it was all about mindset. So
Yeah. Is that what you tell a young goalie who says, "Hey Matt, like I got a huge tryout tomorrow, huge championship games tomorrow. What tips do you got for me? I got a lot of nerves, right? What tips do you got for me?" What would you say to that goalie?
yeah, I mean, first question is what is your favorite drill to do? And that's what I say you go and do if you want to go get practice in. I mean, if I remember day before every single game this season, I would make sure we did a really fun inside finishing drill because I will maintain it to the grave as I think there are very few goalies that are better inside 2 yards than I am.
Let's
And I would
go.
want to do those all the time because I think it's just so much fun. You make a cool save off the shoulder or you get a clean stick on it. It makes you feel really, really good. And that's the thing about inside shots too, is that the stakes are so low because you're never expected to make the save. And so typically when you let them in a drill like that, it would never really make me feel bad in the same way that maybe letting in a 15-yard step down would. So it was all about building that positive vibe. So if I'm talking to a youth goalie, I ask them, what is your favorite thing to do? What do you think you're best at? And let's sit down and do that. If you want to juggle and that's your favorite thing, let's juggle and let's do that and get you feeling good. If you want to do tennis ball right off the racket, let's do that. Or if you want step downs, shots down the alley, whatever you want, and just get you feeling mentally right before tomorrow. Don't worry about the weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just adding on to that, like, you know, trust the training, right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of goalies put in like hours and hours of work and practice and millions of
Mm-hmm.
shots. And then the mind is very fickle. The next day, you know, the day before
Yes.
the game, you're like, am I any good? You're like, bro, you've seen a million shots. Of course you're good. Like, don't go to negative town right now. Trust that training, do some visualization exercises and get out there and dominate, right?
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
just find something to hang your hat on and something that you you know you're good at, because every single goalie has one. Some people might be the best outlet throwers on planet Earth, and they know that. Every time you're down in the dumps, just think about that and realize, like, hey, I am really, really good at this sport, and I've put in so much work. So let's just go and play it.
Yeah. Love it. Talk to me a little bit about your specific style of goalie play. I know about a year ago you asked me, I'm switching to the wider base. Any tips? Which I responded back a year later. So sound like you figure it out. Sometimes those problems just sort themselves out, huh? Anyway, talk to me
Yeah.
about how you play specifically now, and they're like, are the adjustments that you make because of the leg or no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. If I had to define the way I play right now, it's low base, low arc, and just very explosive upper body movements, especially.
Yeah.
Even if I don't necessarily have the fastest hands on planet Earth, I really like to, try and throw as much as my weight as I can over to the ball. And that's definitely evolved even since getting to college. Even this time last year, through my entire junior year, I played a very high arc.
Mm-hmm.
And after game 2 or 3 this year, my coach pulled me aside and he was like, I think we can make an adjustment here. Let's play lower. You have really long limbs. You're a tall guy. Let's give you half a second more to see that ball, and I think you're going to make a lot more saves. And it ended up working out. And so, willingness to adapt was obviously huge. But in terms of adapting to the leg, I think manifests in two different ways, and it's one, um, again, like that whole idea of throwing myself at a ball is I know when I'm stepping off my right leg, it's not going to be as explosive as stepping off of my left. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really about getting my whole body behind that spot wherever I can see the ball that's coming to, and being able to really try and smother, control any rebound if it hits my chest, my shoulder, my leg, and pick it up on that second bounce. And so the other way it manifests is outside the cage. It's really just self awareness. I'm a competitor. I want to be able to go and run over guys or have some sweet face dodges to get around defenders, and kind of beat guys with speed, but I know I'm not going to.
Yeah.
The
Right.
NESCAC is obviously, I mean, there are some phenomenal athletes in my league, that I just can't keep up with when it comes to a foot race or anything like that. So, um, yeah, it's trusting my defenders on ground balls outside the cage, and it's trusting my stick skills more than I trust my legs or my speed outside the cage. And so I rely a lot on, top hand fakes, face dodges, um, and passes up and over with kind of like my long, lanky arms than I do on, you know, trying to run through a guy or
Right.
trying to
Right.
split dodge around someone.
Right. That face dodge was my bread and butter too.
Best move on earth. Goalie
Oh
face
man,
dodge is the best move on earth.
because attackmen, they don't play defense. They just
They jump
see
every time.
that big
Yes.
stick every time. You can get them every time, and especially if you really get them and you give them a little look back. And oh man, that was like kind of like trash talking without saying anything, I think.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, out 90% of the time outside the cage, I'm using a face dodge,
Yeah,
and I just attackman for whatever reason will fall for it every single time. And so, um,
every time.
I will keep going back to that, as I keep playing lacrosse. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, like I said, you just wrapped up your final season. Talk to me a little bit about this season, if you could.
yeah, so it's been a lot of fun, honestly, and I'm really grateful to all 4 years at Williams. It's obviously been a bit weird with COVID and all the changes to kind of our playing structure. But I had the opportunity to start my last 2 years here. Junior year was actually because of injury to a senior goalie, which obviously was super unfortunate. But I'm grateful for the playing time that I was able to find, even if I wish the injury itself didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then senior year, senior captain, found myself, fully into the starting job. Ended up playing all but very few minutes of the season. Um, and it was, I mean, it was the most fun I've ever had in my life. Um, and so it were a lot of up and downs though. There was actually one point in the middle of the season, for probably a 4 or 5 game stretch where I could only wear my prosthetic during games. I didn't practice for about 2.5 weeks. I was on crutches going to class, um, full time every day because I had a blister on my leg that swelled up, got infected,
Oh,
and it really hurt to wear the prosthetic.
yeah.
Um, and it was really hard. And now luckily I can wear it again and it feels a lot better. But um, it was definitely a tough situation from the get go there. But my teammates were super supportive, and I was able to still play well in game, which made me feel pretty good. We actually in during that stretch, we on senior day we had an overtime win over our biggest rivals, Amherst College. We won 10-9. It was I'll remember that game forever because it was my favorite save I've ever made. 9-9 as time expires, an inside shot, obviously. And I jump across the crease. I'm kind of like airborne. I make the save, and so send it to overtime. And then one of our sophomores, Jesse Shapiro, closed it up a couple of minutes later.
Let's go.
But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun, and I think I'm obviously super humbled by a lot of like the individual honors that are coming out of this season. Luckily, I played well enough that people are noticing, but I think what has been most important is that we kind of had a down year last year, and so this year we were able to kind of right the ship a little bit, make it back to the NCAA tournament, and I think lay a good foundation for the next few years of Williams College lacrosse. Obviously, I'm bummed I won't be able to be a part of that as a player, but we'll be supporting it as an alum as much as I can.
Awesome. Well, congrats on a great year. Like I said, do we got video of that diving save?
I can find it. It definitely
Yeah.
wasn't diving. It was more. I jumped up, not out. You feel?
Okay.
But I can go and find it for you.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can give Evan does save edits for me. Maybe I can get him on the save edit and see if it.
Hey, D3 save edits. They go hard. That's all I'm saying.
Dude, I love watching any save edits. D3, D2, MCLA. I love it.
I have to thank you too, and Evan for the save edits, because our goalie room would watch one or two save edits before every single game this season from your YouTube channel, and so it was, I mean, every single time. Anything, I've become a big Knox Dent fan, so his save edits are pretty crazy. I remember the one where he got injured and jumped in and made the save.
That was insane.
It was insane. It was my coach texted it to me right away, and I was like, "That's what I'm trying to be right there."
Yeah.
Obviously, and I mean, a lot of top line goalies. Well, we watched a lot of Entenmann, watched a lot of Will Mark, and pretty much entirely from your YouTube channel. So thank you for that.
Of course. I mean, I enjoy watching them just as much as the next goalie as well. In fact, anytime I'm having a down day, I type in 2016 John O'Connor's save edit, and it's versus Jack Kelly in the Brown versus Navy.
We have watched that one far too many times. That was the best goalie game of all time.
It's insane. It's insane. If you're a goalie and after you watch that one, you're not going to be feeling bad. You're gonna be ready to play. So yeah, and even like on a serious note, like 100% recommend that goalies, if you want to get in the mood to play, or you want to feel good, like go watch those save edits. Ideally, you've got your own to watch, but like like we're talking about right now, like you can get just as fired up watching Will Mark make some sick saves.
100%. I this season especially, I've incorporated. I've watched some of my own highlights, especially when we're playing teams that we've already played. Just to prove myself that I can do something against these teams. And then Lax Goalie Rat save edits. And I've started just typing in like most dominant sports highlights on YouTube and just watching like LeBron James chase down blocks and Ronaldo free kicks and everything like that. And just realizing like I might not be LeBron James, but I can obviously strive to be.
I love it. That's an amazing tip, right? Just get fired up. See what dominance is like in all aspects of sport. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story and letting kids, hear what it's all about to work hard and play lacrosse at the next level. Do you have one more year of eligibility? Are you just going to choose to graduate or is that it?
Yeah, no. So I actually have 2 more years of eligibility.
Right. We could do it. We could do it for 2 more years.
We could. It's so my name is in the graduate transfer portal. Was kind of, I put it in on a whim before the season just to see what the interest would look like, and I have gotten some, but it hasn't necessarily lined up with the graduate programs like academically that I would want to do.
Got it.
Very big in international relations, and so I'm looking for a program like that. And so at this point, I do have a job lined up as well. My name's still in the portal. I'd have to do some navigating there, but If any coaches are interested, we'll see. But it's at this point, it's looking like I will be entering the workforce. So
there you go. Where are you
we
going to
will
work?
see. I'm moving down to DC. I'll be doing some government consulting down there.
Awesome.
So very, very excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congrats. And who knows, maybe some coach, will hear this and be like, I got to get this kid in my program. We got a great international studies graduate degree.
Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
Matt, thank you so much for coming on the
playing.
show. Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure you keep playing some sort of club ball situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you had to leave the goalies out there with the final piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow. What words do I hang my hat on here? No, I mean, in all seriousness, it's just have a lot of fun doing it. I think the best goalies really, really enjoy going out with their friends, taking shots, going to the gym and lifting, working on explosive steps. And so really buy into that process. And when obstacles are thrown your way, as obviously my leg was for me, don't cower away, but just accept that as a part of the process. Love the opportunity to overcome a new obstacle, and keep doing what you do. I think you're speaking to a whole generation of the next stud goalies, the next John Connors and Jack Kellys. So it's it's just I'm very grateful to be able to speak to everybody and just keep working.
Matt, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Damon. It was a lot of fun.